Well, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Places We'll Go show. Now, look, today we have another incredible guest for you. From coming to the UK as a refugee to an IPO, Ali is a formidable and, quite frankly, unstoppable force of nature. And it really is just such a great privilege that we get to spend some time with him today, as he is going to talk about some of his journey. So, welcome to the show, Ali.
Thank you for having me.
Well, absolute pleasure. But look, I'm not going to let you get away with just that. So before we get stuck in, I'm going to just say a little bit more about Ali and perhaps some of his key experiences. So Ali is actually an ex-Goldman Sachs investment banker turned healthcare entrepreneur. In 2004, he founded and scaled Circle Health. And then in 2014, he had an even more audacious plan of redefining primary care around the world, founding Babylon Health. He's recently moved stateside to build a brand over there, including a listing on the New York Stock Exchange. Really looking forward to hearing a bit more about that. But we were just talking about this before we hit the record button, and it's really fair to say that life doesn't come without its challenges. And I think that, Ali is perhaps one of the most tenacious people that we've ever had on this show. So Babylon Health at one point was valued at around 4 billion. And now he's kind of bringing it back up again after a bit of a turbulent period. But really, in true character and style, Ali has got a fighting spirit like no other. And actually, he's able to admit when things go wrong, and able to change course as a consequence of doing that. Just finally, Ali often talks about the role of Amazon and the highs and lows that they have faced in order to highlight how things can just go up and round in the business world as well. So he's had some incredible moments in life and business, and he actually recently won the prestigious Lloyds Bank Entrepreneur of the Year. So with so much firepower in him, it's great to have his perspectives and to share his journey on life and entrepreneurship. So welcome once again, Ali.
Super kind of you. Thank you so much for an extremely kind introduction. I'm not sure if I deserve all of it, but thank you.
Mark, you need to unmute.
Sorry, I don't know what happened there. Apologies. We'll edit that a little bit. The mark of a man to accept such praise so humbly. Now, Ali, you have a unique upbringing that's led you to where you are now. And I was just saying to you before we started, I watched a video of you where you talked about the necessity to dream big and build fast and be brilliant and help others' dreams come true. Big, bold statements. What about your upbringing led you to be such a big thinker?
Super kind. I'm not sure that big thinking or a small thinking or anything has a lot to do with your upbringing. I was the child of a wonderful parents who were very loving, who worked extremely hard to get in life. My father had his challenges in terms of he was prisoned for his political views where before I was born, then was exiled, and then through life, bit by bit, built a life for himself. And my mother worked, kept a full job while looking after us, while my father was often traveling as an engineer on the sites. So I think that when you grow up and you see your parents working through life and taking it as it comes, it's just a great role model for any child. And I think vast majority of children, if they have the privilege of watching that, and then hopefully the right circumstances. I'm a huge believer, Mark, that so much of your destiny is decided the moment you're born. The parents you have, the circumstances in which you're born, the genes that you are gifted with, decide so much of where you are. So you mentioned Amazon in your startup, right? I wonder how Jeff Bezos would have done if he wasn't born in a well-to-do middle-class professional family and was born in a village in war-torn Afghanistan, for instance, right? Our circumstances has a lot to do with our successes, but then, or failures, but then we make the best of whatever it is that we have. So I'm super grateful for the circumstances in which I was born and brought up.
You know, there's a wonderful quote that I always think to, and that is that geography is destiny. And it is just so true. And of course, you know, breaking down the barriers, you know, in a digitized world we live today. And of course, you are standing at the forefront of trying to make that change as well. But it's still, you know, the other major saying is that, you know, talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not. And it is absolutely at the core, you know, of this thought. But then tell me, Ali, you know, you came to the UK. You couldn't even speak English at the time, if I'm not mistaken. How did you find that transition?
You know, it's super hard. Immigration, it's very hard thing to do. You leave your family. I was 16 at the time, and I was on my own. I went from an average middle-class family to the poverty and loneliness that comes with being a refugee. So, but you know, everything has two sides to it. So on one hand, it's super hard and super difficult, but on the other hand is what shapes you, right? If you go through this, you understand the difficulty. And I think Malcolm Gladwell, I often quote him on calling this desirable difficulties. I think in English we say whatever doesn't kill you make you stronger. I'm not sure that is always true, because it could also damage you a lot. But in my case, it was helpful, and it showed me that you could go through a lot and come out of it if you keep going. I think there is a wonderful book that was made into a film which called Touching the Void. I'm sure you've come across it, which recounts the accidents that happened to a mountaineer. I met him actually. And the thing that stood in my head was that the only rule in his mind was do not stop. Because if you stop, there is only one outcome: you freeze to death. As long as you can keep going, you have a chance of another outcome. And I think that is it's easy to say that, but you learn it by doing it. And I think it's the experiment of keeping going that taught me that it doesn't matter how difficult the circumstances are, you keep going. Now, that doesn't mean you always succeed, of course. That means you also sometimes fail. You keep going and you fail, and you have to get up. I think the Chinese have a wonderful expression that says, you fall down 7 times, but you get up 8 times. It really isn't about how many times you fall, it's about how many times you get up. Now, we live in a society that every time you fall, some people, not most people are actually very empathetic and very supportive, but some people make him show of it and say, you see, they were too ambitious. You see, they shouldn't have done that. You see, they failed. You see, they were crooks, this, that, the other. They make up anything they can. And therefore, it makes us feel bad about failing. But the reality is almost everything we have in light. I mean, I can see there is a light shining on your face, right? That light came because Edison was prepared to fail 10,000 times. It was his 10,000 experiment that made him succeed. Did he fail 9,999 times? Or did he learn 9,999 times on how to get to the 10,000 success? So I think, and we should talk about that. I don't want to be speaking in one tone, but I think we mistake life with a game. There are 2 kinds of games, as you know. There are finite games and infinite games. Finite games are like basketball, football, you know, they have a rule. There is a set of players in it. I think Simon Sinek talks about this very well. And there is a finite time, right? And we all kind of think life is like that, but life is not like that. Life is a game. A business is an infinite game in which there are no rules. There are no finite number of players. There are no finite number of amount of time. New people come in at any time, they make their own rules, and the game keeps going. And you just keep playing. It's not the end that matters, it's the game that matters, it's the play that matters. And unfortunately, we put far too much pressure on our people to succeed as if they were playing football or tennis or something. And the game finishes at some moment and they can go and have a rest. That's just not the reality of life.
Ali, brilliant insights. Touching the Void is a fantastic film. Hard, but fantastic. Actually, I worked at Mars for 10 years, and back in the day, in the first generation, that business failed 6 times before they hit the formula that then became the catapult for an amazing global business. You seem completely unshakable in your conviction and belief, but are there times when you doubt yourself, or is that even not a thing?
No, of course. I doubt our path, the decisions we made, things we've done all the time. And I'm often criticized for admitting to them. I'm often told that you're supposed to never admit to mistakes or never accept failure, because the moment you do is the moment that you look weak and everybody thinks that, okay, things are wrong. I mean, if you look at Donald Trump, for instance, he never admits to any failures of any sort, right? I think somebody told me recently when Boris Johnson apologized in Parliament for some mistake he made, that they said we give him 2 weeks, and actually he lasted 10 days from that moment, I think, something like that. And so we do live in this society in which we're supposed to put a facade up. But the reality is we all have our doubts. We all have our questions. I met an artist once, very famous artist, one of a world-renowned artist. He told me every single time he goes on a stage, he is so nervous that he often pukes or vomits before he goes on a stage, and then he goes and does the stadiums, right? People have their vulnerabilities, they have their doubts, they have their questions, but it's not. But we are defined by all of that. And by the way, that's not a bad thing. Having those doubts, having those insecurities are also a factor in what keeps us going and what motivates us, what keeps us on our toes, right? I mean, creates the adrenaline at very molecular chemical level, gets our brains engaged. And I think we should take all of us, whoever we are, with everything that we have. It's that entirety of the thing that shapes us, not parts of us that shape us.
Ali, that's great. And I want to ask something around culture. And in particular, clearly you've spent a long period of time in the UK and fairly recently gone stateside. And I haven't had that pleasure of doing that to this point yet. But I'd love to just explore perhaps maybe some of the cultural differences that you see between the UK business environment and that of the US, and whether you do feel there is a bit of a difference in attitude, and perhaps whether that allows you to be even more entrepreneurial, as so much I've heard that the US is all about.
You know, it's both cultures have their positives and have things that are not as positive about them. That is true, by the way, about everywhere, Richie. There isn't a culture in the world that is purely fantastic or purely bad. It's a mix. United States is a much, much bigger market than anything. In our sector, in healthcare, and I can't think of any other sector where a single country is responsible for 50% of the expenditure in that sector. If the world healthcare market is around $8 trillion, United States is a $4 trillion market. So to be a global large winner in healthcare, you have to be in United States. There is, in my view, very hard to do others, because there is no other market that comes even close. Every other country collectively means it's just tiny. I mean, let me put this in perspective. If the U.S. healthcare was a country, where do you think it will rank in the world GDP?
I'm going to hazard top 7.
It's the 4th largest economy in the world after United States, which is itself China and India is it's US health sector is bigger than the German economy. And that kind of almost tells you why, if you're a healthcare entrepreneur, you have to be in United States, right? So that's why I came here, not because I thought you can't be a great entrepreneur in United Kingdom. I think Britain has done a phenomenal job. Throughout its history, by the way, we were one of the first entrepreneurial nations during the Industrial Revolution. We were a massive entrepreneurial nation by traveling the world, creating companies across the globe. It had its negative colonial side, but British colonialism was built to a large degree based on entrepreneurs going everywhere and doing their things. Many, unfortunately, did them in ways that today we have to apologize for. But it was that, and if you look at the British migration to United States, for instance, it's very interesting to compare North America with South America, where in North America, Britain basically encouraged everybody having their own piece of land, doing whatever they do. In South America, everything belonged to the king, usually Spanish. And that showed the difference in culture and in difference in flourishment of the economy. So I am not one to bash British culture for its entrepreneurialism. I think that Britain, for its size, has done phenomenally well, but we have our downside too. I mean, we do also sometimes don't encourage success the way we should. Somebody, Richie, once played a very interesting game for me. I suggest you try it. They said, what is the business newspaper of UK? I said, I don't know, Sunday Times. He said, okay, let me take Sunday Times for you. He took the Sunday Times business section and opened it up and went page by page. And there wasn't a single page that didn't have something very negative to say about a business. It was almost hard to find a single page that was encouraging, that said, well done, that is amazing, what an achievement, right? And I think there is a part of that in our culture, that instead of celebrating our, not successes unnecessarily, not rah, 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 but just saying that, look, some people tried hard and well done to them. We are very good at criticizing, right? I mean, look at what you and I are recording this just on the wake of England qualifying in the World Cup from the preliminary or from the group stages. Rashford scored 2 goals to get us there. You remember at Euro when he missed the penalty. He became the hatred that young man and the criticism that young man had to face versus the celebration he gets a couple of years later, right? I just think we sometimes forget. Those are both sides of the same sportsman. Sometimes you fail, sometimes you win.
It's very in accordance. We had a guest on recently, Zoe Scaman, who talked about how cynical and bashing UK media is. It's not great. Let's talk about healthcare. So you're disrupting and innovating in the healthcare space. For those who don't know much about what Babylon is bringing to the market, can you tell a little bit about what you're trying to do and how you're going about doing that?
Mark, it goes back to what you were saying earlier on in our conversation. In my life, I had an opportunity to be rich enough, became very poor, and now I'm rich enough again. I was young, I'm older now. I was an immigrant, I became an insider, now I'm an immigrant again, right? And it doesn't really matter if you're young, poor, rich, old, insider, outsider. Everybody I met in life almost have the same needs and desires. They just have different opportunities. And I think that all of our jobs, in whatever need has to be to identify a need and try and serve that need better than it is. And the need to have healthcare accessible and affordable to all is a universal need. It's just that not everybody has access to it. And when we looked at how everybody has a mobile phone almost everywhere in the world, and we ask ourselves a question of, can we use the devices most people already have to give them the healthcare they need, most of the healthcare they need, most people need? And that was the genesis for Babylon. It's not an easy thing to do. We are not even 10 years old, and we have no pretense that we're going to get this done overnight, or we're going to create a company that can be an overnight success. I don't even know whether we in Babylon will be able to achieve what we set out to do. But what I do know is that somebody sometime will. I do believe that if you combine the advances in technology and connectivity with the ingenuity of professionals in the medical field, you can absolutely make healthcare, at least primary healthcare, accessible and affordable to every person on earth. I don't think this is a technical problem. I think this is a problem that can be solved. Unfortunately, much of it is cultural, political, economical, but there is no reason why we cannot provide accessible and affordable healthcare to all with the resources we have today in the world.
You know, that you talked about where you're sitting today, for the size and breadth and depth of that marketplace, and of course, being able to make a dent in the US then means you truly make a dent in the top 5 largest countries in the world in that sense. And never before in the history in the world has an international company been able to penetrate in a mainstream way the US healthcare system. So not only are we talking about audacious visions around the mission, but also geographically very, very challenging. The landscape you've chosen, almost, some would suggest, you've chosen the most impossible of tasks to take on the challenge, which is symptomatic of you as an individual, I'm sure. But what I want to come on to is a question, and I think key to this whole game that you're playing out there is the thought around harnessing diversity and the role that diversity plays in your ability to create and foster this challenge and tackle this challenge. And I'd love to get your point of view on the role that diversity plays in your ability to uncover and unearth and get to the bottom of this challenge.
So if that's okay, I'm going to start with the first part of the comment you made and come to the issue of the diversity as a result of it. I had a really interesting conversation a couple of weeks ago in the United States. Somebody who thinks they're a competitor to us, we think they're peers, we think that we are all trying to make a living in the world and change the world for a little bit better. I think their company is doing the same. But came to me, and I was really shocked, and came to me and said, hey, you guys have come into the United States, and almost repeated word by word what you said. No foreign company has ever come into this country and succeeded, and we'll make sure that you failed completely, you will never succeed, all that kind of stuff. And I was taken back, and I turned back to him and I said, look, I've been an immigrant before, and I just immigrated to the United States. And I tell you the story of every immigrant in every part of the world. In the first 5 years, you're right, we're complete outsiders, we wash the dishes, we clean the floors, you laugh at us, you ignore us. Second 5 years will be your peers, third 5 years you'll be working for us. I mean, that's in a way, it's like, it's not true for everybody, but my point was, it's natural that at the beginning you don't do very well because you're trying to find the context, the place. If you can keep going, and not everybody succeeds in keeping going, circumstances sometimes overwhelm companies and individuals. But if you keep going, eventually you learn enough. But you need to remember the drive that got you from where you were into the new place and keeps you going has given you a momentum and a speed that is ahead of the speed and the momentum that people have perhaps in the place. So, and that brings me to the issue of diversity. I don't care if you are from whatever background orientation. What I care about is how much do you have inside you? How much drive do you have inside you? How much ambition do you have inside you? How much thinking do you have? How much innovation do you have inside you? And our job of any entrepreneur, any CEO, any business person, in my view, above everything else, is to recruit amazing people and then give them the opportunity to flourish in that environment. Do we succeed at this all the time? Of course not. We make mistakes all the time. We hire the wrong people. We succumb to prejudice. But we try to correct it, but we try to fix it after a while. We now have people from many, many parts of the world. I think last count was almost 70 countries, from all sorts of backgrounds, from all sorts of orientations. But to me, they're all human beings who are trying their best and are joined by a mission of making healthcare accessible and affordable for everyone on earth. And the more diverse we are, the more views of the world we have. So you're absolutely right. We've taken a task that no one has ever done before in entering the United States. Whether we succeed or not, of course, I'm biased. I believe we eventually will. But you never know what is going to hit you from where and what makes you fall. I think the Chinese have a wonderful expression that I was mentioning to you earlier, that says you may fall 7 times, but you will get up 8 times. And it's those getting ups that will define you.
Here, it's what's inside people that really matters when it comes to recruitment. But I'm sure you've taken lots of good advice along the way. What role has mentoring played for you? And are there any particular people you'd like to call out for the role that they've played in helping you?
So I'm a huge learner. Remember, I was a failed scientist. I started my career as a physicist, and engineering physics. And the thing I learned, and the thing I always follow, is life is a learning experience. You're constantly learning, and you're learning from everybody. So I am an avid reader. I'm always reading. I'm always listening to fantastic podcasts like yours. And I don't have a single mentor, nor did I ever had a single mentor, in the same way that I never had a single teacher. People teach you different things at different times. I've got advice from amazing people, famous people who didn't serve me well at all. And I had advice from very ordinary folks who helped serve me very well. So, and I learned that it is not how famous you are, how grand you are, how big you are. It's how wise is that advice and how related it is to me at the circumstances I'm in. That matters.
Ali, it seems like you're a man who clearly loves the audacious challenge, but also the thought of putting yourself into uncomfortable positions in order to gain and maximize that learning experience. One of such was perhaps the unorthodox, some could argue, thought that you went to Rwanda as a way into learning some great lessons from different healthcare systems. And in fact, I heard a lovely quote that you said, that the Rwandans are culturally amongst the richest in the world. I love that quote that you said. So can you share with us why? What's driving that thought to put yourself into perhaps what some would say unorthodox positions and to help you enrich your learning?
So let's just take the example of Rwanda. If your mission is to help make healthcare accessible, affordable for everyone on earth, and you start in UK, where should you go next? If you just sat back and thought about it, would you go to another rich country that has all the same circumstances as UK? Would you go to France, to Germany, to where would you go, right? You have to go to somewhere that is economically very different, in a nation that is culturally very different, to learn how do you serve them. In Rwanda, we need to deliver healthcare at what is marginally over $1 a consultation. We do thousands of consultations a day, and we do them sustainably. We've been keeping going for a long time now. One of my regrets is that circumstances has not allowed us to expand this beyond Rwanda, because we're still learning. We're still learning that how can you do this in a way that is sustainable so it can roll itself out. So there is no point in now going from Rwanda to another country, because we're not in search of expansion, we're in search of learning. And I don't think there is anything that Kenya can teach us that Rwanda, for instance, doesn't right now, in terms of what we need to do to make our delivery more accessible, more sustainable. So I think it's natural. If your motivator is learning to deliver your mission, then I don't think there was any other answer. If you put a mission up because it sounds great and then chase the money, then yes, you're right. You go from one place to another. Now, I said the phrase chase the money as if that's a bad thing. We all need to be sustainable. We all need to pay salaries of our staff and our employees. We need to make money in order to keep going. So I don't think there's anything wrong with chasing money too, right? Because you have to, but you need to balance. You need to balance your need for sustainability with your need to serve the mission for which you were created.
In that sense, there's a balance between being patient and being impatient. You probably need to be both at the same time. Is that your experience?
100%. And we are unfortunately live in a world in which we're constantly being forced to be impatient. We constantly are being asked to produce quarterly results, grow every quarter, become a little bit more profitable every quarter, create new technology every quarter. Everything is being measured faster and faster. And part of that is because we created that myth that you could do things overnight. You said, I often use the example of Amazon. I often use the example of many companies like Tesla. Can you imagine, like, we're 8 years old, give or take. Can you imagine Tesla after 8 years? That was 2010. They haven't had even the S series. They were barely out of creating those Lotus cars that you remember the Lotus lookalike that they hacked in order to make it into an electric car. I mean, look at Tesla today versus when they were 8 years old, right? The thing that made Tesla going, and the genius of Elon Musk, is that he could collect capital long enough, motivate people for long enough to keep going until they succeed. I remember 2017, almost 15 years after they were created, they were on the verge of bankruptcy. Elon talks about how the 3 years between 2017 to 2019, end of 2019, 2017, 2018, 2019, were the worst years of his life. He lived in the factory. He was fighting a bankruptcy almost every other month. And by 2021, he was the richest man in the world. Why? Because he took 20 years to solve a big problem. And I am not sure how many of our entrepreneurs are given the time it takes to solve big problems. As a result, we are all pushed to solve little problems. And try and talk to a VC about a big, ambitious thing to do. And they will always tell you that will cost too much money and it's too long and I can't do it. I need to return my capital in 5 to 7 years, which means you need to succeed in 3 years. So give me something fast that you can succeed in 3 years in. And that's why you get so many companies trying to deliver a pizza faster, because it doesn't take a lot of time to solve a small problem, right?
What an analogy. You're making me hungry. Ali, I have to then probe just one layer deeper there, because if that's, you talked about the systemic nature of the VC world around that short-termism and the 3 to 5 year payback around it. How then do you convince people to see the longer term vision, which you have been relatively successful at being able to do that? So what advice would you have about being able to push out to try and show people the Tesla vision, you know, in order to see that big naughty problem come to life?
I think you can only be true to yourself and argue what you believe and hope that some people will agree with you. I mean, for every one person who backed Musk, there were hundreds who didn't. And the same is true with us. But I do think that we were beneficiaries of a very long, very sustained period, almost from 2001, where it became bit by bit the norm, and increasingly, eventually, so much so of the norm that it dominated the investment community in also a negative way, which was all about building growth, innovation, and nobody really cared about how long it takes, if you wish, right? As long as the next round was going to be bigger. So that has finished now. We now have been 2022 was the end of that period. And I think that is a super dangerous thing, because in 2020 from 2019 to 21, we went to an extreme of taking anything and saying it's amazing, it's great, let's just throw money at it, to now to the extreme of almost nothing is good enough, right? And I saw that movie in 2001. One of the benefits of age is that you collect experiences. So I've seen this. And in 2001, believe me, for every Amazon that survived, there were many great companies that didn't. And I am seeing already many great companies who are folding, not through any fault of their own, but just because the circumstances is not, their money is not there. Look, Amazon survived because a German bank found $600 million they gave them 4 months before they were supposed to go bust, right? And no one else would give them money at the time. It was just a sheer piece of luck and tenacity that got them there. And so I don't want to take a lot of credit for this. I think we were beneficiaries of the circumstances, but I just think that you need to be true to what you believe. I think solving big problems takes time. And believe me, all you gotta do is Google my name or Google Babylon and see how many detractors there are about what we're doing. And they never say, something that is, you know, I mean, they take some aspect and say, that's never going to work. For instance, somebody says, the AI is never going to work, as if we kind of said AI is going to work overnight. AI is very, very hard. I mean, going back to the Tesla example, they've been trying to make a self-driving car for almost a decade. They're still working at it. And he just announced that he may have been able to crack it, and it may come into the market next year, right? And one thing is, how confident are you that we will have a full self-driving car in a year or 2 or 3? I am not that confident. How confident am I that we will have it in 10 to 20 years? I'm very confident, right? So how do you finance that journey to get what is necessary in 20 years today, right? Somehow we need to bridge that gap. Otherwise, we will never progress.
Well, Ali, the time has whizzed by. We're coming towards the end. So final question. I'm going to loop all the way back to when you gave those 4 pieces of advice to those eager graduates at UCL. You said, dream big, build fast, be brilliant, and help others' dreams come true. And on that last point, tell me a bit about that. What does that mean for you, helping other people's dreams come true?
Mark, I've been in my life beneficiary of many, many, many people helping me to get through sometimes really tough circumstances. And it's always been people I hardly knew who've helped me through something. And we all talk about, and we just did, about how some people can be negative. But I find in my life, for every negative person or a detractor, there is 7, 8, 10 people who are really genuinely good human beings who try to help you in your journey. And I just think it's what makes humans successful. Humans are not where they are. Homo sapiens are not where they are because of our brain or because of anything else, but because of our ability to act as a community, as a social force, help each other to get along the way. So I think that while each of us should individually dream big, because doing something small is as hard as doing something big, build fast, because life is very short unless somebody figures out how to deal with longevity, which I'm sure they will at some stage. For now, our life is very short. And then be brilliant, because cutting corners will always come back to bite you. It's like building a foundation. If the foundation is not as strong, the building won't stay. But if you do all of that for you and what you're involved in, then remember that other people have the same needs, the same desires. They have the same dreams, right? And if you can help them get there, you create a better community, a better society in which we can all thrive. Where people fail is often because the society around them failed. And none of us want to be part of a community that fails, because it doesn't matter how successful you are. If the community around you is failing, you're miserable. So helping the community to succeed is actually a very selfish act, to help yourself succeed.
What a wonderful way to finish off the session there, Ali. And I just, from the bottom of my heart, want to say a massive thank you to you for the insights that you've shared, which have gone across the length and breadth of longitude as well as latitude in insight. But I'm going to hand over to Mark just for his final thoughts and some remarks. But I just want to say a massive thank you from me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ali. Just to summarize for everybody listening to this. So your amazing life's adventure, but at all times making the best of what we have. And sometimes you just need to keep going and get up 8 times. And indeed, life is an infinite game. And along the way, you said you don't mind admitting to your mistakes, which flies in the face of the inherent cynicism that lies within society, unfortunately, in terms of trying to bash people down. So in that context, Babylon is a truly incredible thing, trying to create accessible and affordable healthcare for everybody. Is there a bigger goal, you could ask? We also heard you talk about diversity, and in fact, it's what's inside all of us that is really how you recruit amazing people. You talked a bit about mentoring and about wisdom and experience, but when we hear about you going to Rwanda, it's the signature of your unorthodox thinking. And in the end, we need patience to solve the big problems. Ali, it's been great having you on. My lingering thought is, I love the way that you dream, and may all your dreams